We are going to take the skills that we learned in our last lesson and apply them to something original. And this is, for me, kind of a cute project. It's a tourist guide kind of thing. This one's about Fort Worth. But you can choose your own place that you'd like people to visit and 5 things about that place. So if you wanted to choose 5 things that you think people should see in Boston or 5 things you think people should see in San Antonio, that's whatever. That's fine. Right here, I've got 5 things I think people should see in Fort Worth. You see there's 5 rollover buttons over here. There's a home button over here. And there's narrations. So there'll be my voice because I'm the one who did the audio. And I click on the Japanese garden right here and I'll stop talking and let it narrate. Right? So each one of those buttons has narration. I'll show you what that looks like on screen in the classroom, but here's this. There's a so you see it. There are 10 pictures in addition to the home screen. So I've got my Fort Worth home screen and then 5 little pictures and 5 big pictures. And there are 5 voiceovers. So that's how this project gets put together. We're going to start with the 5 places we want people to go. I got some Fort Worth stuff figured out. And I've got the Japanese garden. I wanted people to visit this Japanese garden. So I got 2 pictures of that. You see they're different sizes. I'll show you how to do that. That's my museum picture. I made sort of a collage. And there's my little button that I'll click on. There's my Stockyards pictures, 2 of those. My water gardens pictures, 2 of those. And my zoo pictures, 2 of those. So you're going to make 2 pictures of each thing. That's going to happen in Photoshop. And to get the sizes just right, you're going to actually go and use just a blank canvas that is a certain size. So I'm going to start by making a big picture. And let's say I want to go to San Antonio this time, and I'd like people to see the Alamo. My big picture is going to be 550 pixels. Make sure this says pixels right here when you start a new document, by 400 pixels. And that's it, 550 by 400 pixels. I say create, and I've got a blank page to work with here. Now I want to go to the Alamo, right? Remember the Alamo. And lo and behold, there it is, the Alamo. So I'm going to take a picture of the Alamo. And the easiest way to do this is to copy the picture and go to edit, paste. And if it's too big or too small, then you can edit free transform or click Control T on your keyboard. Either way, that'll work. And remember, if you hold down the Shift key while you're transforming it, then it will stay constrained the proper proportions. I think some of it just falling off the edge is okay here. And when I hit enter, it stays put. That is going to be my large picture of the Alamo, right? So I'm going to go to File and I'm going to go to Save As and make yourself a new folder. Make your new folder called whatever your, let's say this is my San Antonio. And you'll put it in the folder for your place. That's going to be Alamo Large, right? And it's easy enough to save that as a JPEG, so I'll just save that as a JPEG. Click OK on that. So now my folder, the San Antonio folder, is going to have my big picture of the Alamo. That's going to be the one that when I click on the button, you see this in the center of the screen during the narration. The small pictures, you'll need 5 big pictures like that. The small pictures are actually going to be on a much smaller, the button size. And the button size, here's my pixels, is going to be 100, 100 by 70. So make sure you have pixels 100 by 70 right there. That's going to be the size of my button. And maybe you want to use the same picture. Maybe you want to use a different picture. I think I'm going to use this one with the kind of crazy sky. Why not? I'll copy that And boy, I bet you a nickel it's going to be too big. Oh, it sure is. So you free transform that one again. And this is going to be the thing that eventually winds up being my button that I push. Right? It doesn't look great, but that's because it's teeny tiny. When I save that, that's going to be Alamo small, right? And it's going to be a JPEG. I have Alamo large and Alamo small. If I look at those two pictures the same way I looked at my last photos, that's the big one, that's the little one, that's the button, that's the thing the button's going to carry me to. You'll do that with 5 places, a big and a little picture for each of your 5 places. Make sure you do those in Photoshop. Once you get those created, you're going to write yourself a little bit of a script. And that script is going to be something that you want users to see. So this is the script I used for my Fort Worth presentation. And I'm going to open up Audition and just start with a brand new audio file. And if you wanted to name it right out of the gate, let's say you wanted to do your file about, I'm going to do the Japanese garden one here. I'm just going to do that because I have it written down. Japanese garden. When I click OK, it brings me up a blank file. I'm going to push the record button, and then I'll talk into the microphone. When you're visiting Fort Worth, be sure to stop by the Japanese garden in the botanical garden. And that's fine. This is me talking at the beginning, so you can play it back with the space bar. Right? So you'll save as, and you'll put that in your folder. Browse to your folder. Make sure you're putting it in the same folder as you had before. So if you're all saving everything under San Antonio, save it that way. This has to be a WAV file. WAV files are the ones that have been working correctly in our version of Animate. So get that done, save it, and I'm going to pause for a second and pull it into my Animate file. So, assuming you have made 5 big pictures and made 5 little pictures and got yourself some sort of audio recording for 5 things, and if you wanted to, you could come up with a postcard or some sort of opening screen and make that the right size too. I thought that was a cute idea to use a postcard that tells people, San Antonio, what have you. I used a postcard in mine, in my sample, so I'll go ahead and use it again in this. I'm going to start with ActionScript 3.0 right here. Don't click HTML5 canvas. If you start with that and then you do all these steps, it absolutely won't work and you will be heartbroken because you'll have wasted an awful lot of time. So make sure you start with ActionScript 3.0. Once you have that, your library is empty. You can import things to your library, but did you know that you can pull things in this way? Just drag and drop. So you can import or you can drag and drop, whatever you prefer. I made a few other things for myself. I made a home screen, big and little buttons. And I actually have a home button I made because in my presentation, I made this little thing in Photoshop. It's going to be the button that takes me back to my home. So you can make one of those too, or you can just try to do that by using the drawing tools in Animate. It's up to you. I just made everything in Photoshop since I was in there. And before I start putting everything on the stage, what I want to do is get my stage size correct. So I've gone out of my library back to my properties, and the properties right here for the stage size are 550 by 400. I'm actually going to make it a little wider because I want some room on the right side for my buttons. So I'm going to make it 650 by 400. When I do that, then it sort of widens out. You saw that happen. I'm going to pull my little picture out for the beginning. And you can also set the properties there, 0 and 0 being my X and Y. If I want my stage to be this background color, you can do stuff like that. I can click on the stage itself and then choose the color picker and actually use the eyedropper and pull whatever color off of here I like. The reds, the blues, up to you. The yellow. I'm going to stick with the red though. I think that looks kind of looks classy. So there's my red. And finally, I'm going to make this last 60 frames. So I'm just going to insert a frame here. That's my background. Let's call it background. and let's lock it up. The next thing I want to do is I want to create my buttons. I'm going to put my buttons down the right hand side, and I'm actually going to put a home button on the screen. So I'm going to create my buttons. I'm going to go to Insert, New Symbol, and let's just call this B1, and it's a button. I'm sorry, I did that too fast. Make sure that it is a button. I had preset to button from before, but that's the thing you need to double check. So insert B1 and make sure it's a button. It's got that picture of a finger pressing a button. I'm going to take my first small image right here. The Japanese garden is my first small image, and then I'm going to go to Properties and set it to 0 and 0. So now it is perfectly lined up. In my editing mode, I'm going to make a frame in the hit state, and then I'm going to make another layer. I'm not seeing my other layer right down here. I apologize. I've got this screen kind of squished. There it is. There's another layer for me. And I'm actually going to put layer 2 at the bottom of layer 1 beneath it, so that when I make my rollover effect, I don't cover the picture. Right click in the overstate in this layer, the bottom layer. I'm going to take my rectangle tool, draw a rectangle, and then I'm going to set up the properties of a rectangle. So I'm going to take my selection tool, click on the rectangle, and I'm actually wanting to put it to -5, and then -5. And then this picture itself is actually 100 by 70 pixels. So I'm going to make this 110 pixels. That way it'll be slightly wider, 5 pixels on either side. And instead of 70, I'm going to make it 80, so it'll be slightly taller, 5 pixels on either side. You see how that's kind of got a nice look to it. Setting it sort of a 5 pixel space around the outside. And if you want it to have a neat effect when you press it, you can insert another keyframe in the down state and change the color. Totally your call. You can do what you wish with your rollover. I do want it to change when the button rolls, though. Go back to my home scene, back to scene 1 here, and in my library, I now have B1. I can drag that out, and oops, I did not make a new layer. Make a new layer for my buttons. See? And on my button, I'm going to put the first button now that I've got the layer for it. And we'll line this up using the alignment tools later on. Incidentally, I do have 60 frames here. But we're going to go ahead and we are going to duplicate this button. So right click on button 1 and you're going to say duplicate. And it's called B2. And you're going to open up B2. Open up B2, I said. Click the picture, go to properties, swap it with the second small picture. If you go back to scene 1, you see button 2 here. And then you'll duplicate button 2, call it B3, open that up, click the picture, swap it out, get the third small picture, and so forth until you have all 5 of your buttons created. You're just duplicating, swapping the picture, duplicating, renaming it, opening the editing mode, and swapping the picture. So do that for all 5 of them. We're going to come back in just a minute on the next piece of video here.